Oh shit. Here we go again.
I think after months of back and forth on the balancing scale of this game, I think it's finally come to a head that this issue is coming to light more and more. That they don't really know how to balance well for this game, and that's pretty evident. And I think this is a part of a bigger issue because the way they release updates isn't good enough for when it comes to doing minor tweaks like this. It's always overly stimulated or understimulated for how much damage we do or how much zombie spawns, and you can see it actively affecting the game. Okay, so we used to have a lot of zombie spawns at the initial release of the game. There used to be big hordes, there used to be large areas that they would engulf, right? And now they're cutting back the amount of spawns because they need to balance for a new system where the player is absolutely deprived of any self-reliance. And this is a cancer to the game. It is causing active issues within the game's community and balance. There seems to be an active disconnect between what players actually are wanting and what the developers are adding and working towards. And that's something that needs to be addressed now, in the moment, actively. And anyone that's watching this video, I'd say you need to make sure that you push for that, because we are going to go down a very dark route with this game if we do not pull things together quickly. I'd also like to throw a little bit of, victim advocacy here in there a little bit, right? By saying that how could they really even have an idea with how the way we format some of our suggestions? I've been in the forums, I've made forums before. I started out at possibly the least amount of cohesiveness possible, and I've moved up. I've been a little bit more analytical recently, right? But there's still a massive amount of people that are either screaming for the concept of an idea without basically writing it out, or they're screaming for a feel, which they don't elaborate on either. Or, right, they go for something more vague that is harder to translate and can be translated in 9 to 10 different ways. Oh, I want the game to be harder. Oh, I want the weapons to feel more connective. Oh, I want the impact to feel a little bit more. That can be translated in so many different ways, and because there's not a roadmap by the players, there's not a roadmap by the devs. Players need to make a roadmap for the devs, and devs need to listen to that roadmap. But we as players need to be more cohesive with how we relay that map, because if they are following your map and it doesn't lead exactly where you want it to, the vision that you were actively trying to show them has actively failed to communicate to them. And by that, I say we start with the basics first before we start moving into what we want to do, okay? If we need to know how many enemies we want to know how hard the enemies are, and we want to know how scarce resources are right off the bat, okay? I liked the flow of the original few updates after the reanimate because it had a vibe to it, okay? It had the horde numbers we wanted. They weren't too hard. They weren't too crazy difficult on their own. You could handle them. You could fight. You can move. You could work as a team still, or be independent relatively to yourself. What the game is moving towards now is a forced co-op existence on public servers, which will not work, and I promise you will kill the game. People will push for this, but the way of doing teamwork is not by doing this. They implemented a scanner system a while back, and they've basically copied and pasted it into the map of Berks County as a RNG system. Well, the RNG system has already failed because the RNG system has not been fine-tuned, and it's not the right implementation of this system. This is a team-based objective for Scanner, right? It should not be spawning in areas where players are prioritized to be solo players. Trying to do one of these solo is more tedious than it is difficult, and that burns away the player's motivation to play the game. Second, there's been a thing recently that I've noticed that because they've been going so hard into the PvE hardcore side of the game, they have not allowed players to remotely breathe. Every single match feels rushed because they are speedrunning. There is a level of risk to each run, and the fact that players cannot even stop to breathe on a match anymore is what's killing the community. There needs to be a little bit of player freedom assigned to each match to let players have unique player interactions versus just simply making the difficulty a wall for players to get over, because if that's the case, players are just going to optimize. We keep reinforcing a optimized playthrough more and more, and it's sucking the life out of the game. And let me elaborate a little bit more on what optimize means, okay? So I'll paint out a picture of what the basic public lobby looks like in this game, and I want you to make your own assessment call on if you'd want to keep playing this game after having every single match be like this. Okay? So there are no people talking. People don't talk because they're already well optimized, and their objective is to get done as fast as possible. These are the speedrunners that the community hates, but they're also the community itself. They are people that will run off from the group and start doing objectives as fast as possible, use distractions. They will have weapon spam, whatever meta they can get their hands on, and they will get the objectives done ahead of time, leaving you or your team in the dust, right? And everyone's working outside of their own bounds. They're grabbing everything, they're putting it in their back pocket, and they'll never use it, while people are dying of infection or dying of medpack use. And there's no incentive to play with each other, because there's no incentive on objectives to play with each other. Or you have the polar opposite effect, where there are maps that are forcing you to play together, but the issue with that is that they are so tedious to do as a team, but they spawn separately from where the team should be. It's like putting a team objective in a place where there's only one person. It doesn't make sense, and it does not work properly because you don't use it tactically. A scanner objective on the inner workings of the Berks County power plant would be hyper effective, but for some reason the devs have prioritized placing it in the least effective locations, like at Bar, or at the train station, or at another random POI which it doesn't make sense to even be at. That has also been an issue with the gas objective, where it has spawned constantly, and the gas objective itself is very tedious on its own. There's an over-tweaking of RNG right now that is making all randomized objectives basically the same, and I think that shouldn't be the case. Having an entire town be filled with, like, gas makes zero sense. Having a town with a bunch of medical scanners in it makes zero sense. There needs to be a lot more thought put into objectives, for one, and there needs to be a lot more thought put into team-based objectives instead of how they are being implemented now, because it is failing the community. Mute lobbies and speedrunning lobbies are a side effect, an active side effect of game difficulty or game ease. Before, it might have been too easy and people were farming for nightmare levels, right? But now it has become the polar opposite. It is annoying to do combat in a game that is essential to have combat. It is annoying to do objectives in a game where the game is built around objectives. And it is annoying to be a team player in a game where team play is supposed to apparently be number one. Things need to be reworked, things need tweaked, and I do not think that a monthly release is good for this type of tweaking. If you are touching numbers, it should be weekly updates or like every so many weeks. By making the players have to wait a full month to see how you want to tweak the numbers is leading to straight up community vertigo. It took us like four months of tweaking the melee combat damage. And it went up, down, up, down, up, down. I want the devs, I asked, this is to the devs, right? How are the devs supposed to get feedback off of that? Because not only did you have players acclimate 4 times to that combat system, but you also had it waver so greatly that players cannot even get a ground footing for where to start to tell you how to fix that. It's vertigo off of time itself. Like, it is too much delay time. People don't remember these details. People don't hold on to these details. And if they did, you already killed them off. They are not going to come back to tell you this after you've prolonged it this long. The monthly release schedule needs to be upheld for larger updates. These smaller tweaks and smaller patchworks for melee combat, unless it is a full rework, should not be occurring on a monthly basis. Because we need to address these problems now, because this is a core of your game. If you do not hold this down and get this working, it's going to be bad for the game, because the game is already in a downward decline as is, even when it was on a steady playing field prior, okay? It still needed tweaks back then, but these overcorrections have actively punished the community that has stuck around. And that's evident. People are angry about this. People are upset that these tweaks don't have as much thought put into them as the people who want to play the game. And I think a lot of these tweaks and difficulty alterations come from a single fact of they are trying to find an easy way out to minimize their use of resources, and it is not helping, because this idea is flawed. You cannot tweak numbers to get a successful and engaging outcome on things like this. If you keep tweaking numbers and having to tweak the environmental hazards like the zombies constantly, then you are cutting away from aspects of the game that players liked when they first joined. I do not think that numbers should be used to fix the balancing of the game, for the most part, past what we see in base damage, or in prior updates, or a little bit below that, right? Stamina needs to be a limiting factor that contributes to us not going Rambo, but it also has to have environmental hazards to keep people on their toes and wanting to work as a team, because these objectives are fully lazy. They aren't placed in proper areas, and I think they could work as a team-based incentive. But they're done in such a manner that if you were to play with a team, all the team objectives are done at the beginning of the map, and there's no progression to want to push towards the end of the map. There's no incentive to keep your teammates alive. So hoarding is still going to be the case. You just have to work together cooperatively while somebody eats up all your meds. And somebody will say, well, then don't revive them if they go down. Well, here's the thing. If they're not engaging the objectives and you have to engage the objectives to go forward, that means that they can sit and be lazy and then you'll die for it. If they want to instill an aspect of difficulty into the game, one of the things they need to do is put some work into RNG traversal. There's so much player freedom on how to move around a map. For example, Pottsville, there are 3 different ways to get to the same courtyard objective, okay? What if they actually started putting effort into making RNG routes close and open randomly so that players cannot optimize a single route? I'll give an example of this. For Pottsville, it's go to power plant. I mean, not power plant. Go to the community center. Go to the community center, leave the community center, and then go down the right alleyway because it has the most optimal route to get to the end game. It has a fuse and a timer. Well, if people are going to keep using the same route, we need to alter that. We need to make it so that either a crashed bus is blocking the road, or there's like a fire blocking the alleyway that they would usually go to get there. We need to make sure that there's a little bit of randomization to the runs. All runs feel the same because all runs go perfectly optimal, perfectly fine. There needs to be a misfortune element to the game so that people can't just keep using the same strats over and over again, but they have to have a generalized idea and evolve with the existing situations. Anyways, back to melee. Melee is a symptom of another issue that I've seen in the game, where the devs are not too familiar with what they want out of their zombies. We're going towards a COD Zombies route, COD Zombies round 20, where, you know, they have a little bit of bullet sponginess, and their pressure is from how much health they have, but there's less of them. And I don't think that's what players want. I don't want that. And even the people that are asking for a harder game do not want that. But they're acting contradictory to themselves. If we want a lot of zombies, and we want to be able to actually interact with them instead of running around like it's freeze tag, we need to make sure that they're actually mortal and able to be fought easily. The issue that I had with a update, I believe, 3 months ago, prior to the crazy nerfs, was that there was an overabundance of knockdown attacks. You can hit the zombies down on the ground, and then their heads were small to hit, and their hitboxes were broke. So you'd sit swinging at their heads, wasting stamina, while more zombies moved up on you. This should not be the case. If they're on the ground, they should have the damage modification for when they're on the ground. That wasn't at that update. I don't think it's even been back in the game since that update. So you had a lot of, as I would call it at the time, floor fishing for their head. You'd knock them down, they'd go on the ground, you try to hit their heads a few times, and you couldn't hit their heads, and they stand back up, and you knock them back down again. Bowling pin gameplay like that is just not fun. You need to make it so that when I'm hitting them in the head, there's a few set hits that I hit them in the head when they're up, and then I hit them and they go down once, maybe, and then I hit them one more time and they die. None of this up, down, up, down, up, down. It is so repetitive. It is so boring. It's very disappointing to see from a company that made a game like Chivalry. I saw some clips of it today. I'll put one up on the screen right now. The duality of these two games is insane. You have a game that has very good graphics, very good gore, very good combat, and then you go to this game, and it has the most stiffest inaccurate swinging types I've ever seen in my entire life. It has weird balancing. It has all over the place game design philosophy. It really sucks sometimes. So I'm gonna lay it out here at the end of the video so that it is very clear that the core ideas are that the release schedule should not be applied to game tweaking things. So like bug fixes, it should be bug fixes and tweaks that are all within a 4 or so week period of a release or something like that. There should not be a monthly release for the bare minimum or tweaking elements because we need immediate fast feedback. It shouldn't be like an update where we have to wait for the essentials to be complete. Also, another thing is that we need to get the core ideas of the game down. If we want to be a No More Room in Hell game, we need to have a lot of zombies on screen. And another thing too is that we need to realize that zombies are not a boss fight, but they are actively a horde-based, swarm-based enemy. Less emphasis needs put on the fact that zombies are really strong and powerful, and more emphasis needs put into the fact that we are human beings and we have a limited amount of stamina and fight in us before we can actually get overwhelmed. Because right now, they're turning zombies into freaking muscle men that are incapable of being killed conventionally, unless with extreme effort, while players are getting weaker and weaker. And the more weaker you get, the more cowardly you're going to get in publics. And the weaker you get, the less likely you're going to actually work with your teammates and be selfish. It's a self-repeating cycle. And another issue is teamwork. Teamwork was never incentivized, and now they're trying to patch it in at the last minute with these scanner objectives and these gas things and all this other stuff. It needs to be thoughtful. It needs to be well thought out, and it needs to be a communication between the level designers, RNG developers, and the actual implementation, whoever's implementing this. Because you need to understand how players traffic these maps so that you can better adapt to it. And it's not like patching out metas, it is more like adding alternatives to throw a wrench into their plans. So they have to keep adapting. And your RNG system is already perfect for that. Every match should feel different, and that could either be through modifiers or closing and opening player routes, right? But it should not be as simple as a objective type or a number value that is affecting the outcome of this game.